I'm on my couch, and that's when the light bulb moment went off. How is there no such thing as a high protein ice cream? Smearcase is the first and only frozen cottage cheese ice cream. It's half the fat, half the calories, and the most protein for any pint out there. You have to innovate in 3 different ways. It's the product itself. It could be the brand, an innovative brand like Liquid Death, or it could be if you want to pursue frozen, then freaking do it. Nothing's stopping you.
Joe, thanks a lot for coming on the Shut the Scale podcast, man.
Deb, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Excited to dig in.
Definitely. So, Joe, for everyone that doesn't know what Smearcase is, could you just give us a brief intro about the product?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Smearcase is the first and only frozen cottage cheese ice cream. It's half the fat, half the calories, and the most protein for any pint out there. It's powered by cottage cheese. It's boosted with collagen, all natural ingredients. It's just packed with nutritional value. Think high protein ice cream, think regular ice cream, think, sort of at home Ninja Creamy-esque, but like way better. And you have just like a creamy, smooth, indulgent dessert.
Amazing. And I can vouch for the taste. I mean, we were just chatting before this. I tried your product at a trade show in Thailand. We're both sitting in Toronto, New York, so that's pretty far from here. But it was incredible. Like I'm like, this is healthy, and this tastes really good, and it's packed with protein. And as someone that's like vegetarian, like we're always looking for different sources of protein because we can't really get it from the main, I guess, sources. So yeah, man, I can personally vouch for how good the product tastes.
Heck yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you got to try it in an exotic environment because it's not available in Canada just yet. So I guess Thailand will have to do.
Exactly. But Joe, before we go into Smearcase, I just want to go a bit more into your background. So when I was doing my research, it seemed like you came from, fashion, sustainable fashion before Smearcase. I guess, what did building a brand in a completely different industry kind of teach you about building a food brand, basically?
I mean, the similarities are there. It's for me. There's just so much overlap and crossover between the two. When I had Rocky Clark, it was a sustainable men's denim line using organic cotton and hemp denim that reduced the amount of water and energy needed to create it, and it was a super high quality fabric. We made all the jeans and jackets in New York City, so made in the USA out of Italian denim. It was an ode to history. It was an ode to Americana. It was a lot of storytelling. But I think when you have a physical product, like you still have to produce it, you have to market it, you have to operate the business, you have to function a website, social media, right? All these different aspects. So I still use a ton of those skills today at Smearcase. We take a digital first approach. We still have to produce. We still have to operate. We have to market, you name it, we do it. So the crossover is there, and even the name Smearcase, like it has historical context, right? There's a story to the name. It literally means cottage cheese. The Pennsylvania Dutch used to call cottage cheese Smearcase when they came to America. I love history. I love meaning. I love context, functionality, right? I didn't want to create fashion. I wanted to create clothes you can wear every day. And same with Smearcase. I wanted to create an ice cream you can eat every single day that was functional, yet, better for you and indulgent. So yeah, a lot of the skills have served me and made me a better founder and entrepreneur.
Amazing. And then I guess was there a connection to cottage cheese, or like how did ice cream and cottage cheese kind of come together, I guess? Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time I was training for a marathon. This was 3 years ago now. I was training for my very first marathon. And during my training, I just couldn't find myself to eat enough fuel, right? Enough protein, enough good carbs. So it got me thinking, what's something at the end of the day that I can eat that will refuel and recover me for my next training day? And, I was like, how about ice cream? It's easy to eat at the end of the day. It's refreshing. It's cool. It's the heat of the summer. And, I go to my local store to try to find the ice cream with the most amount of protein, minimal ingredients, not that bad for you. And I just came up short. Every ice cream is loaded with calories, loaded with fat, loaded with sugar, loaded with unnecessary ingredients. And I just thought to myself, like, how could this be, right? Ice cream is made from dairy. Dairy is traditionally a great source of protein. So how is there no protein in ice cream? And at the time I was eating a lot of cottage cheese, honey and blueberries as like my go-to healthy dessert. And it got to the point where I just started getting the cottage cheese ick, the texture, the taste. I was having trouble masking it. So I'm on my couch, and that's when the light bulb moment went off. Like, how is there no such thing as a high protein ice cream, and how is there no such thing as a cottage cheese based ice cream? And that light bulb moment, I was like, all right, what if we try this out? And next thing you know, my sister and I were creating the initial recipe in my apartment, and we came up with something that was too good to be true, and that sort of sparked the rabbit hole.
Amazing. And then when you came up with that initial recipe, what did like validation look like? Was it just like your family and friends just kind of making them taste it? And then how did it kind of go from there to like, let's say a co-packer, for example?
Yeah, I think my background in food, like, man, I'm an Italian from New York, New Jersey. We love food. I love cooking. I love making things myself. So having that like high standard of quality and high standard of taste, that's what it had to taste good, right? Yeah, sure, I wanted the nutritional value and the functionality of it, but it had to taste good. So we just used ourselves as a litmus test, and we were tough. We were our toughest critics. Like we had honestly, it didn't take too long for us to find a recipe that worked just because, again, like my sister and I, our background in food, our background just cooking. My dad has owned delis and restaurants. I made bagels for him. So I'm used to working with my hands. I'm used to combining ingredients to find the best sort of taste, texture, and form factor. So once we started tasting initial batches, we really leaned into, okay, what is this trying to tell us? What does this want to be? Instead of projecting our own opinions on it, like we sort of tried to extract, like, okay, how can we sort of shepherd this product into what it wants to be, and leaned into those specific flavors and nuances of it. And I think like that shift in perspective and that shift in sort of testing, learning, reiterating allowed us to come up with a formula that is pretty much still standing to this day.
Amazing. And then when you had that formula in place, was the first, because I know a lot of met some founders in food that they're like at CPG where they're like they have the recipe in place and they're like, do I go to a co-packer right away? Do I first try to validate it by doing farmers markets? So I guess what was that next step for?
Yeah, the next step was one, just eating it myself, enjoying it, implementing it in my own training routine and lifestyle to make sure I was getting the protein and fuel that I needed during marathon training. And then from there, I was like, wow, they're like, this is too good to be true. I have to share it with others, right? So I shared it with other founders, other athletes, other wellness groups. I shared it with who now is my co-founder, Drew. We both had clothing brands, and once he tried it, he was immediately hooked and just like, hey, like this is like incredibly differentiated, incredibly innovative. So we then partnered up to strategize like how are we going to bring this to market. So at first it just started, batches in the apartment, and then we found a test kitchen at a co-packer that we were going to eventually use, but we were just running tests, sharing it for free with people just to get feedback on the brand, on the name, on the formula, the taste, the texture, and just iterating and finding like what flavors we were going to bring to market. And all the while, we were validating like, hey, are we able to mass produce this? That was something that we had to validate. Like we were going to take a massive risk and produce a minimum order quantity with our co-packer. So we had to make sure that it was able to run on their lines. So as we were testing things in the test kitchen, we were working with our co-packer at the time to make sure we could mass produce this stuff and run it on those lines. And that gave us the confidence to you know put our foot on the gas.
Amazing, amazing. And then when I was doing my research, I also saw that you trademarked the word Froco even before you had a single store. Just correct me if I'm wrong. But that sounds like a really interesting strategy. So what was, I guess, the reason behind that? What does Froco mean? If you could also kind of go a bit.
Yeah, that's a result of this is not our first rodeo as business owners, entrepreneurs, founders, right? Like, how do we play immediate defense? Because we knew we had something special. So, once we were going down the line of production and packaging, like we knew we had to trademark and protect ourselves. So we came up, obviously Smearcase, your new protein dealer, and then Froco was sort of like a last minute ad that like frozen cottage cheese, like it makes sense, right? You have ice cream, you have plant-based alternatives, you have Froyo, frozen yogurt, and now you have Froco. So we just thought like, hey, we're building a category. How do we build a moat around it? Let's trademark the term of the category that we're building and the product that we're creating. And yeah, we did that before our first production run because we wanted to make sure that we were protected going into it. And yeah, I think the consumer education piece comes up here and there, but I think it's just so intuitive that it just makes total sense and it's fun to say. Um, and Smearcase as the brand name has been polarizing, which is sort of fun.
Yeah, it definitely. No, I mean, it's in the end, like you're competing against, and the freezer aisle especially is so competitive. You're of course competing against a bunch of for shelf space in the end. So the fact Xperia case does stand out from that perspective. And when it comes to, so you raise a great point that you wanted to play defense at that moment. I guess this might be jumping ahead, but how do you look at, let's say, the bigger guys looking at you, like a Haagen-Dazs or any kind of other massive ice cream brand, looking at you, kind of entering the frozen cottage cheese arena? How do you kind of look at that competition from that perspective? 'Cause it is a new category that you're defining as well.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's a ton of indirect competition, right? Your Ben and Jerry's, your Haagen Dazs, your Yasso, Halo Top, and now these new incumbent, the new players in the protein ice cream space. At first, to tell you the truth, like I didn't really think about the competition. I just knew that there was white space. There was a gap that had to be filled in the ice cream aisle. Clear as day to me. Being high protein, actual nutritional value, and then cottage cheese. Like there was just so much white space for a consumer like myself. I genuinely just wanted to create something that I would consume, that I felt comfortable purchasing, that I felt comfortable putting into my body, right? And consuming. So I think every founder should be creating a product that they want to consume, that they're emotionally, intrinsically tied to, and that they can see themselves buying. Right. So that from the branding to the product, this product just resonates with me. And of course, I put my own bias onto that. But I think as a founder, like that, my connection to it keeps me going on the tough days. So I think at the beginning, like we didn't really think about the competition a whole lot. But when we launched that fancy food, we sort of knew, and this was in June of 24, coming off of our first production run. It was our first sort of splash into the CPG space, first time in the industry, and we just made so much noise. And that's when we really knew, like, holy moly, like, we have something incredibly special here, where we have, you know. The big dogs coming up to us. I'm like, oh my gosh, like we didn't think that this was possible. Yet here you guys are doing it and it tastes incredible. So that like we left there with goosebumps, understanding like, oh my gosh, like we just not only created a category, we made a ton of noise and we got validation from these big players. Like we knew at that point that they were watching us. And we also know that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when another frozen cottage cheese comes to market. It's just how it is. It's just like we validated the space, we validated the demand, and now other players will come. And you know what? At the end of the day, yeah, it's gonna stink to see, to tell you the truth. It's gonna be really a tough pill to swallow because they're going to bastardize the product. They're gonna put ingredients that don't belong in food. We know that. But at the same time, it'll be incredibly validating for the category that we're building. And a lesson that I learned when I had a clothing brand is copying is the sincerest form of flattery. So it just is what it is. And at the end of the day, there's nothing better for a gas station than another gas station across the street. We live in America. It's a capitalistic, competitive society, and that's just the way the world works.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, as someone that's tried a bunch of different protein ice creams out, I mean, a lot of times you look at the label and you're like, I cannot understand half the ingredients in here.
Yeah,
you know,
it's insane. It's
but
sad. You have these two modes of thinking where like let's create this in a science lab and optimize it for the nutrition label, the macros, or like let's use real food, whole ingredients. Let's use at naturally earth driven ingredients and make it like holistically whole. And health is in the ingredients versus health is in the macros. So I'm in the latter camp of just earth derived holistic nutrition.
definitely. And I'm guessing, has that been one of the pillars of your marketing, kind of communicating that to the end consumer?
100%. We're using real whole foods. We're using natural sugars. We're using real dairy. No natural flavors, no food coloring, no seed oils, like just minimally processed ingredients that create something that's packed with nutritional value and tastes great. It's sort of that simple.
Definitely, definitely. And then kind of going deeper into the marketing piece, you mentioned that the challenge isn't getting into more retailers, it's more than making consumers know you exist. I guess what's your playbook on, 'cause it is a new category in the end. So what's kind of your playbook on category education? You're not a massive team. Budgets are limited. Marketing budget is limited. So I guess How do you kind of look at that?
Yeah, I mean, the first line of defense is make a ton of noise on social media. You have free lottery tickets that you can scratch off every single day, multiple times a day. You don't know which one's going to hit, but when it does, you have millions or hundreds of thousands of impressions, right? And potential customers are onboarded immediately. So, Instagram, TikTok, my own personal LinkedIn, we're pulling all of those levers. And then from there, we're seeing what works, what resonates, and we're doubling down on that, and just seeing what the customer wants, what's trending, but also staying true to the brand. I think we're also really fortunate to just add to the conversation that good culture started. We know we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're so grateful for good culture to sort of pave the way for cottage cheese brands. They're educating the customer that cottage cheese is a health food, packed with nutritional value, high protein, low fat. Then on top of that, that's one layer. On top of that, you have their consumer who's marketing good culture for them by making recipes out of the product, right? Nobody wants to eat cottage cheese out of the tub. They're taking it out and putting it into a food that they enjoy. So we think we're just adding to that conversation, and we're firm believers that because of good culture doing marketing for cottage cheese, because of consumers educating their followers, influencers, media dietitians, they're educating their followers that cottage cheese is a health food. And then on top of all that, you have protein is so hot right now. And we live in that world of cottage cheese, protein, and ice cream. And those things are just, ice cream is fun, protein is hot. Cottage cheese has been around for centuries and is finally sexy again. So we're just really fortunate for the timing that this product has launched.
Definitely. And I mean, I can attest to your LinkedIn. I mean, that's how I found you, for example. And you're building in public. And I think there's a lot of benefit to that. As someone like myself, for example, if I found Smearcase in Toronto, which I didn't have to go to Thailand for that, but if I did find it in Toronto, for example, I would pick it up because I've bought into your story. I'm following your story. I'm following your posts. I like the product. I go and tell other people. So even something, I think like brands like Midday Squares and other brands are doing really well with for example, with LinkedIn. So yeah, I mean, on that point on social media, I guess, has there been a underrated or a tactic that you used that actually you were surprised that it works so well? It could be on TikTok, Instagram, could be on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I appreciate those kind words. It's nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, geez, as a founder, like it's part of the job to create content. It's part of the job to document. It's part of the job to build in public. I think that's what customers expect from you. But I got to tell you, it takes up a lot of time and it's exhausting. Doing that part of it is not only physically exhausting but mentally exhausting. And I think I got to the point to a point where I was trying to be something or be someone on Instagram or social media that I just wasn't, and I really had a hard time finding my voice. And I just asked myself, like, what feels good to me, right? What feels authentic? What comes easy? And for me, it was just writing and sharing on LinkedIn. So it was almost just it was a result of me getting my reps in between Instagram and Twitter and what have you, all these different outlets. But LinkedIn just felt the most organic and it felt effortless, right? So that I just leaned into that, and as a result, like I've cultivated a following that I'm incredibly grateful for on LinkedIn, and it feels good to just share wins and losses and how I think about things, showing up in that professional manner. Just made a ton of sense for me. But it was difficult knowing that it was a part of the job and feeling like I had to be a talking head on Instagram. Just didn't it just wasn't working. So just that slight pivot just unlocked a lot of engagement.
Definitely, definitely. No, I mean, kudos to you, and I'm hoping to see more LinkedIn posts for sure and following along. And I guess from Smearcase, from the from what I understood, you're targeting more of the natural channel, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe walk us through how initially when you started off, what was opening those first few doors like, and what's changed, I guess, after that.
Yeah, the result of fancy food just really opened up a lot of opportunity for us. We were put in front of the buyers that we wanted to be seen by, specifically in New York City. We knew we wanted to start in New York, the tri-state area, and just own our backyard and just build by going to activations, events, and being on the ground. New York, we have access to some of the great retail partners. We knew we wanted to lean into the natural channel, just given our ethos. given our, ingredient list, given, the better for you angle. And then also on top of all that, we're a premium product. We're a little bit pricier on shelf than other brands. And we know that the natural channel customer is a little bit less price sensitive and they're more inclined to discover new brands and try something new versus the conventional channel. They're just going to go with their, incumbent big food brands. So we were really, really strategic and intentional from the onset. And we wanted to just prove out these test cases of like, hey, is this actually, do customers even want this? Right. And I think we proved that out pretty quickly. And then from there, it's like, all right, now how do we go find those customers and make sure that we're in the stores that we want? But a month after Fancy Food, we were contacted by both Sprouts and Whole Foods to do regional test launches, which we did last year. And now we're nationwide in Sprouts. We're full expansion in Northeast Whole Foods. We're in Fresh Market, Fresh Time. So we're in those top natural channels. And now, like, we just want to go deeper into those retailers and build more brand awareness and connect with the customers and build that brand loyalty.
Amazing, amazing. And if I'm not mistaken, you're reaching towards 1,500 stores by the end of this year, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. This towards the end of this month, we'll be in about 1,500 doors nationwide. A lot of concentration in California and the tri-state, Florida, Texas. Yeah, we're really excited about reaching new markets and being in banners that align with our mission.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Because also the things that frozen is such a like a brutal distribution channel, So I guess you have cold chain, you have slotting, you have the velocity map. It's not exactly forgiving per se. I guess how do you what would you recommend to other founders that are building in the frozen aisle for when they're trying to make their business case for shelf space as such?
It's not as hard as everybody thinks it is.
Okay,
You know,
that's good.
to tell you the truth, like somebody has to do it. Two, somebody has done it before. And I think if you have something that is truly unique and a value add and incremental to the set, like you'll find success. Everybody's got to ship something. Ours just happens to be frozen. Everybody has to store their product. Ours just happens to be frozen. And everybody needs to be in a grocery aisle. Ours just so happens to be behind a door that sometimes gets a little, frosted over. It's a challenge, sure. What grocery aisle doesn't have their own challenges? So I would encourage you, if you want to pursue frozen, then freaking do it. Nothing's stopping you. Just go in eyes wide open, ask good questions and learn, and surround yourselves with a network and partners that believe in you and want to help you. And then you'll position yourself for the best success possible.
Definitely, definitely. I love that answer because I think a lot of times I'm not gonna name names, but I've spoken with other founders in the frozen section, and they're sometimes jaded by how much like by whatever they've gone through, and they're like, yeah, like I don't know if I do it or whatever. So I love the enthusiasm, and I love the fact that you're just saying if you have the idea, if it's something unique, go for it. So I appreciate you giving a bit more
Yeah,
positivity
the
over there.
founder journey is inherently difficult. The path is narrow, truly. It's not an easy thing to build, to start a company, to create a product. It's not easy. So like starting with that, like no matter what you pursue, it's not going to be easy. I don't think if you can get over obstacles and navigate through hurdles, like you're gonna make it happen no matter what. That's what founders do. That's what entrepreneurs do is you make it happen.
Definitely. And of course, on the funding side, you've closed with Wilson Ventures as your first institutional investor. So I guess what two questions there is what made it the right time, and the second question is for someone that's looking to take on that outside funding. How do you actually pick the right partner?
Yeah, I think in terms of timing, you just have money is simply a tool, it's a function. Again, as a founder, if you want it bad enough, you're going to make it work regardless of money or no money. You're going to find ways. You're going to be resourceful. That's what founders are. That's what entrepreneurs are. They're resourceful, they're gritty, they persevere, and they overcome. In terms of timing, like, we made a ton of noise at Expo West this year by winning the Albertsons Innovation Launchpad pitch competition and securing 500 stores with them. And then that was in March. And then towards the end of March, we launched nationwide in Sprouts. So we did a ton of networking, a ton of campaigning. We made the right connections before all of that, right? We cultivated an investor update email list that we were just sharing wins with people, keeping them warm. And then, in terms of timing, the timing was right because we were rolling out. We were going to be in about 800 to 1,000 doors. So that timing sort of sparked a lot of conversations and closed a lot of checks. And then in terms of like picking the right partner, it's such a deep relationship. You're marrying these people. So you have to have such deep alignment on strategy, on personality type, on mission, on outcome. Like, I think Listen is a perfect partner for us because there is just such deep alignment, and we all want the same thing. We want the best possible outcome, and I think we all have different perspective on how we're going to get there, but we collaborate and literally listen to each other and align on what that will look like, and then it's just foot on the gas. So they're just incredibly supportive. They want us to win, and you want an investor who believes in you as the founder, and that's number one. Number two is the brand and product, but they're taking a bet on you, right? So you need to go in with the right mentality that you're going to show up every single day for the business and you're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And I think, having conversations and getting to know the person that you're about to do business with is incredibly crucial.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. That's a really good point that in the end, of course, they're betting on the product, of course, they're betting on the brand, but in the end, finally, they're betting on the founder or co-founders per se. A theme also that came up was that you mentioned you made a lot of noise at Fancy Food a couple of years back. You made a lot of noise in Expo West. Congrats on winning as well. I guess there's a lot of brands that are exhibiting at a place like Expo West, at a Fancy Food. How does a brand truly stand out and make that noise when they're competing against, a limited attention span with 1,000 other brands that are over there?
Yeah, you got to go in with a purpose, right? These trade shows are a bottomless money pit that if you don't go in with an actual purpose of being there, whether you want to launch a new product or you want to get a specific retailer or you want to lock down an investor, right? You can't just show up and just hope for the best. You got to show up with purpose. And then that purpose sort of drives your strategy of why you're there, how you're going to show up, what are you going to do to stand out. But I think you got to show up, you got to be yourself, you got to sort of let the product speak for itself if you have a good product. Like you should be showing up with the best possible product and knowing that there's always a version two, there's always a better version out there, but it's the best it possibly can be at this moment in time. And I think, being showing up as your authentic self and going in like wanting to build relationships. I think Drew and I always show up like we want to just meet people. If that's the only outcome, it was a successful show. Man, I had a great conversation. Like Drew and I always debrief after these expos and events, and it's always like, oh man, I met this person, I talked to them for 20 minutes and I learned XYZ. Like it was really cool connecting with them on a personal level, but also a business level. We're in the business of relationships. If you show up to these trade shows immediately in sell mode, I guarantee you're going to have a tough time. People don't want to be sold to, people don't want to be pitched to. I think there's moments for that. But if you're showing up and like wanting to actually, bring value to somebody, because that's what it is, like business is just an exchange of value. And then doing that on a personal level, like our partners, like this is what I do for a living and our partners out there, that's what they're doing for a living. We all need to make a living, and it comes down to like what do I need, what do I want, but then also what can I give? And I think if you show up in that mentality, you're going to find success regardless.
Definitely, and in the end, I mean, we're all buying from people in the end, in some aspect
Yeah,
or the other. So in the end, if there's a personal connection, we're way more likely to want to do business with each other compared to, yeah, if we're going to keep it transactional all the time.
100%. Like I go out of my way to purchase a product from a founder I know, because I want like, yeah, maybe it's not my first option, but I genuinely like them as a person. I want to see them win, so I'm going to support them. I think that's what that community I think has been missing for a lot of people, especially post COVID. And I think there are ways that if you're looking for community, there's ways to go out and find it and support your fellow human.
And I'm sure even at trade shows, you get a chance to meet a lot of other CPG founders that are also building as well, and the energy must be pretty insane that way as well.
Absolutely. And geez, like you're meeting somebody who's a couple steps ahead of you. You're meeting somebody who's a couple steps behind you. So you could always learn something. You could always give something. And founders just inherently understand each other. They know what they're going through. They know the problems, and you just immediately feel seen and heard, and you have a sense of belonging, and that inherently just drives connection.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Joe, this was great. Thanks a lot for this. I have one last question at the end. Is for someone that's building a CPG brand right now, trying to create a new category like yourself rather than enter an existing one, what's the one thing that you know now that you would have done differently from month one?
Mm, wow, so much. But I think it boils down to if you're going to launch a brand these days or a product, you have to innovate in in three different ways and at least two. So it's the product itself. For us, it's cottage cheese and ice cream. It could be the brand, an innovative brand like Liquid Death, or it could be the form factor, right? And the form factor, Liquid Death is just a great example. They're putting water in a can, which was sort of never done before. So you have product, brand, and form factor. I think a great brand does at least two. An incredible brand does all three. So if you hit one of those, you're going to set yourself up for success and just immediately stand out.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And would you say if you hit 2 out of 3, you can still make it through, or you would say you
100%.
need? Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you need at least two. I think if you have two, you're primed for success. If you have one, you just got to freaking nail it and really just hammer into it and lean into it and but you got yeah, those three principles I think in CPG are incredibly valuable.
amazing. Joe, this was great. Thanks a lot for all the wisdom you imparted, and I'm sure the audience is going to really enjoy this.
Devesh, thanks for having me on, man. This was great. I enjoyed it.